3 months before my wedding, I took my Lamborghini out for one quiet drive. By sunrise, another man was living as me, and I woke up underground with a mask where my face used to be. That sounds dramatic as hell. I know. If somebody told me that story, I would have told him to drink water, lie down, and stop watching late-night conspiracy videos. But it happened to me. My name was Ryan Walker. I was 26 years old, rich enough that people got polite before they knew my personality, and engaged to Madison Cole, the girl I had loved since high school. I had known her since middle school, back when she had braces and a stare that could shut down an entire hallway. Madison knew how to handle my family without letting them own her. That was rare. The Walker family had old money, new money, private money, and lawyers who could ruin your week with one polite email. I lived in a private world, not a celebrity one. Private dinners, family offices, trustees, security teams, people who never raised their voices because they could ruin you with one phone call. And Madison was supposed to become my wife in 3 months. My best friend, Chase Bennett, was supposed to stand beside me at the wedding. Chase had been there since elementary school. Sleepovers, birthday parties, middle school fights, high school disasters, family funerals, bad haircuts, drunk college weekends, all of it. He knew every version of me, including the versions I would have paid good money to forget. I trusted him completely. That was the stupid part. The week everything went wrong, I had too many wedding decisions in front of me. Madison and I were sitting in a private event room with a planner who took table linens way too seriously. The planner asked, "Do you prefer ivory, champagne, or warm pearl for the table linens?" I looked at Madison and said, "Those are 3 names for the same expensive napkin." Madison kicked my ankle under the table. She was trying not to laugh. That was one of the reasons I loved her. She could sit in a room full of old money and still know when everything was ridiculous. When the planner stepped out, Madison leaned close and whispered, "If this gets any worse, remember the red umbrella." That was our old joke. Back in high school, Madison had once bailed on a terrible formal dinner by texting me 2 words, "red umbrella." I picked her up in the rain, she climbed into my car wearing a blue dress with mascara running under her eyes, and we ate greasy drive-through fries in a parking lot. After that, red umbrella meant rescue me from rich people before I say something I shouldn't say. I told her, "Text me that tonight and I'll crash the wedding planning meeting with a getaway car." Madison smiled. "You always say that, but you would absolutely enjoy the dramatic entrance." I did enjoy dramatic entrances. I was rich, not dead. Chase showed up later at my penthouse with coffee, a lazy grin, and the same comfortable confidence he had carried since we were kids. He dropped into the chair across from me while I complained about flowers, table charts, and how my family had somehow turned marriage into paperwork with cake. Chase laughed and said, "You are marrying the girl you wanted since you were 17, and you are complaining about flowers. Truly tragic, man," I said. "If I disappear, tell the police the florist did it." He raised his cup. "I'll avenge you." I believed him. That part still hurts, and I don't mean my face. By sunset, my head was full. Madison was busy with her mother. The family office was sending documents I wanted to ignore. Chase said he had errands and told me to relax, so I did what I always did when the pressure got too heavy. I drove. I drove to a remote road far outside the city, past fields and service roads where nobody had a reason to follow me. It was my quiet route. I went alone, without a driver, bodyguard, assistant, or anyone asking about wedding seating charts. Only a few people knew I went there. Madison knew. Chase knew. A couple of old security guys may have guessed, but they knew better than to follow me unless I asked. That road was where I could be alone for once. I took the Lamborghini because if I was going to run from wedding napkins, I wanted decent horsepower. The first part of the drive was perfect. The road was empty. The engine was loud. The sky was turning orange and blue. For 20 minutes, I could pretend my life belonged to me. Then the brake pedal went hard under my foot. At first, I thought I had hit something. I pressed again. Nothing. The dashboard flashed. The steering wheel jerked in my hands. I swore and tried to correct it. The wheel locked. The car kept accelerating. My stomach dropped because the car didn't feel broken. It felt controlled. It felt deliberate. A black SUV appeared in my rearview mirror. It had no plates, and the driver didn't panic. The SUV held the same distance behind me, calm and deliberate. I grabbed my phone from the passenger seat, but the car lurched. The phone hit the floor. The road curved, my hands fought the wheel, the Lamborghini left the asphalt. Dirt exploded across the windshield. The front end slammed into something low and hard. The car flipped. Glass burst. Metal scraped and tore. My body snapped against the seatbelt so hard I couldn't breathe. Then everything stopped. For half a second, there was only ringing in my ears. Then the fire started. It spread over the hood and through the broken front. Smoke filled the cabin. Heat hit my face. I tried to unbuckle myself, but my fingers wouldn't work right. I shouted for help. Nobody answered. Of course no one answered. That was the whole point of choosing a peaceful road in the middle of nowhere. Peace is great until it means no one is close enough to save you. I coughed, choking on smoke. My vision blurred. Blood ran into my eye. I tried to kick the door open, but pain shot through my leg and it wouldn't move. Then I saw someone standing outside the flames, a silhouette. A man, I thought. Tall. Still, too calm. I reached toward him. Help me. The figure didn't move. Through the fire, through the smoke, through the ringing in my ears, I heard the voice. The person said, "Now it's your turn to suffer." I froze even as the heat kept rising. I knew that voice, or I thought I did. But my head was split, my lungs were full of smoke, and I could barely breathe. I tried to focus, I tried to see his face, the flames jumped. Pain tore across me. I screamed until my throat gave out. Then the road, the fire, the silhouette, and my life all disappeared. When I opened my eyes again, I expected a hospital. I got a ceiling made of concrete, a yellow light buzzed above me. My arms were strapped down, my face was wrapped tight, and every inch of it hurt. I tried to breathe, but something hard covered my mouth and nose. A mask, rough, black, strapped tight against my burned skin. I panicked and tried to tear it off. A hand slammed my wrist down. A guard leaned over me. He was heavy, bored, and looked used to hurting people. He said, "Don't touch the mask unless you want what's left of your face to come with it." I tried to speak. My voice came out scraped raw. "My name is Ryan Walker." The guard looked at a clipboard, then smiled at my answer. "No," he said, "your name is 914. I pulled against the straps. "Call my family!" The guard leaned closer. His breath smelled of burnt coffee. He said, "Ryan Walker isn't missing." I froze. The guard tapped the black mask with one finger. "Ryan Walker is already outside." The first thing I learned about the Hollow was that pain didn't make anyone nicer. That was disappointing. I thought when a guy woke up burned, strapped down, and confused, somebody was supposed to explain what happened before the pain got worse. Instead, the guard cut the straps off my wrists, grabbed the back of my shirt, dragged me off the metal bed, and dropped me on the floor. I hit the floor on my knees. My face throbbed behind the mask. Every breath scraped. My hands shook from pain, drugs, fear, or all three. I had no idea where I was, how long I had been unconscious, or who had taken me, but I knew my name, so I kept saying it. "My name is Ryan Walker." The guard shoved me into a hallway. "Sure it is. I need a phone. Everyone needs something. I need a lawyer." The guard laughed. "You got a mask. That is more than most of you get on day one." I turned on him too fast. Bad idea. He hit me in the stomach with a short black baton. Air left my lungs. I doubled over, and he caught me by the back of the neck before I fell. "That is lesson 1, he said. "Your name doesn't matter here." He shoved me through a steel door. The noise hit first. Men shouting, metal banging, boots on concrete. Someone was laughing, but there was nothing normal in the sound. The cell block opened below me in layers of rusted walkways and concrete cages. Everything was underground. The air carried sweat, dust, blood, and old food. Terrible place, very exclusive. No valet parking, unfortunately. The guard dragged me down a staircase and threw me into intake. A man behind a wire window stamped a paper without looking at me. I said, "You are making a mistake." The man said, "That is popular today. I am Ryan Walker." That made 3 guards laugh. One of them said, "Last week we had a senator, 2 CEOs, Jesus, and Elvis. You were late to the party." They pushed me into a holding line with other prisoners. Some looked half dead. Some looked too tired to care whether they kept living. One huge inmate near the end of the line stared at my mask. He smiled. I already hated his face. "In prison, the wrong people notice you fast," he said. "What are you hiding under there?" I looked away. He stepped closer. "Hey, I am talking to you, pretty boy." Another prisoner laughed. "He ain't pretty anymore. That is why they wrapped him up." The big inmate reached for the side strap of my mask. I caught his wrist. My fingers were weak, but my anger wasn't. He looked down at my hand, then punched me in the ribs. I folded. He grabbed my mask again. Something in me snapped. I drove my shoulder into him and shoved him back into the line. He hit another prisoner. The line broke apart. Men shoved, cursed, and swung. In about 3 seconds, intake turned into a full brawl. I took a fist to the jaw. Pain flashed under the mask. I swung blind and caught someone in the mouth. Blood hit my knuckles. A boot slammed into my thigh. I almost went down, but the big inmate grabbed the front of my shirt and yanked me close. He said, "I want to see it." He hooked 2 fingers under the mask strap. I headbutted him. The mask slammed against his nose. He screamed. I stumbled back, dizzy and half-blind, but I kept both hands on the mask. The guards watched from the doorway. They watched long enough to enjoy it. Then batons came out. Men dropped. A guard struck my shoulder. Another hit the back of my leg. I fell to one knee. Someone stepped on my hand. I felt skin split. The refrigerator guard from the infirmary grabbed me by the collar and hauled me up. He said, "You learn slow, 914. I spat blood onto the floor. "I am not 914. He smiled. "Then why does 914 keep bleeding on my floor?" He threw me into the cafeteria later and left me there. The cafeteria was a concrete box filled with long tables bolted to the floor. Men stared at me as I walked in, checking my mask, my limp, and my hands. Fresh prisoner, injured prisoner, masked prisoner. I took a tray. The food looked terrible. I sat at the edge of a table and tried not to shake. The old man sat across from me without asking. He had gray hair, calm eyes, and the posture of someone who had survived too much to waste energy looking tough. He said, "They tried to take your mask already?" I said, "People here are friendly." His mouth twitched. "You still make jokes. That will either save you or get you killed." "Good to know I have options." He nodded toward the ceiling. "You seen the sky yet?" I looked up. There was only concrete above the cafeteria. The old man stood. "Come on, mask." I hated the nickname immediately. Then I followed him because I had no better plan, and everyone else in that cafeteria looked ready to hurt me for fun. He led me through a corridor and out into the center of the hollow. That was when I saw it. The prison was built inside a massive underground pit, a circular arena spread across the bottom, surrounded by cells, walkways, tunnels, and guard towers cut into the walls. Above us, impossibly far up, was open sky. Real sky. Blue, bright, cruel. The wall rose straight around the pit. Hundreds of feet of rough cliff, broken ledges, metal scraps, old ropes, stains, and marks where men had tried to climb and failed. I stared at the opening above. The old man said, "That is the door?" I looked at him. "You are kidding." "Nope, that is a cliff. That is the door. Your prison has terrible architecture." He pointed upward. "Reach the rim and you get the desert. Survive the desert and maybe you get a road. Reach a road and maybe you find someone who doesn't sell you back." I swallowed. He said, "Most men fall before the first real ledge. Some reach halfway and break every bone they own. 1 or 2 made the rim. Desert took them after." I looked around at the guards watching from the towers. "They just let people try?" I asked. The old man nodded. "That is the joke. Freedom wasn't hidden. It was hanging above us where everyone could see it. That was worse." A prisoner near the edge of the arena pointed at a dark stain halfway up the wall. He said, "That one was a banker, cried about his kids for 2 weeks, climbed on a Sunday, fell before lunch." Another man pointed higher. "That one was a judge. Promised every guard a pardon, hit 3 ledges on the way down." They talked about dead men with casual voices. I looked up at the stains, the torn cloth, the old ropes hanging from places nobody could reach anymore. My stomach turned. The hollow didn't need warning signs. The wall already showed what happened to men who tried and failed. The refrigerator guard walked behind us and slapped a baton against his palm. "Look all you want," he said. "Looking is free, leaving costs extra." The prisoners laughed. I wanted to hit him. I wanted to hit everyone. Mostly, I wanted my old bathroom mirror, my old clean shirt, and Madison yelling at me for pretending not to care about flower arrangements. Instead, I stood under that bright circle of sky with blood drying under my mask, and I understood the first real rule of the hollow. This place didn't just lock men underground. It made them stare at the only exit until they died trying to reach it. The old man looked at my mask, then at my shaking hands. "You still think your people are coming for you," he said. I said nothing. I was thinking of Madison. I was thinking of Chase. I was thinking of every Walker lawyer who could make a judge sweat through a suit. The old man seemed to hear all of it anyway. "If you woke up here," he said, "someone outside stole more than your freedom." For the first few days, I treated the hollow as an administrative mistake. That was my ego talking. Rich people love calling disasters misunderstandings. It makes us feel in control. So I tried the right tone. I told guards I could pay them. They laughed. I told them the Walker family would destroy them. They laughed harder. I promised one guard a number that should have bought his grandchildren beach houses. He told me he would rather watch me say it again after a week without sleep. That was when I began to understand the hollow wasn't broke. The hollow was paid. Still, I held on to hope. Madison would know I was missing. Chase would know. The staff would know. The family office would know. Somebody would notice the man who came home was fake. Love, loyalty, old friends, private jokes, family money. I kept repeating those reasons in my head to keep panic down. Then, the hollow proved me wrong. It happened in the cafeteria. I was sitting with my tray of gray mystery sludge. It tasted awful. My ribs still hurt from the intake fight. The mask rubbed against healing skin every time I moved my jaw. The old man sat beside me, silent as usual. A guard walked in carrying a small tablet. He was younger than the others, with mean eyes and a bored smile. Bored cruelty is the worst kind. It doesn't even have the decency to be passionate. He stopped near my table. 9:14, he said. You still Ryan Walker today? I looked up. I was yesterday, planning to keep the brand consistent. The guard smiled. Good. I got something for you. The cafeteria quieted a little. Prisoners loved entertainment, especially when entertainment had broken ribs and a mask. The guard tapped the tablet and turned it toward me. At first, I saw Madison. She stood in a bright private room, wearing a cream dress and holding a folder against her chest. Her hair was pulled back. Her engagement ring flashed under warm lights. For 1 second, my body forgot how to hurt. Then the man beside her turned. He had my face. He had my face, clean and untouched. The man had my jawline, my eyes, my hair, my smile. He looked enough like me that my brain refused to accept it. Madison touched his arm. The fake smiled at her. Someone off-screen asked about the wedding date, and Madison said, "We are keeping the original date." Ryan didn't want to postpone anything. Ryan! She called him Ryan! My hands went cold. The guard tilted the tablet closer. See? Not missing. I stood so fast the bench scraped the floor. That isn't me, I said. The guard widened his eyes. No kidding. You are uglier. The cafeteria laughed. I barely heard it. On the tablet, the fake Ryan kissed Madison on the cheek. Madison smiled normally. The screen looked normal. Meanwhile, I was sitting underground with a mask strapped over what was left of my face. I reached for the tablet. The guard pulled it back. Careful, touch my screen and I break your fingers, I said. Who is he? The guard shrugged. That is Ryan Walker to me. The big inmate from intake leaned across the next table. His nose was still crooked from my headbutt, which gave me one tiny spark of joy in a very bad week. He said, maybe she got the upgrade version. The cafeteria laughed again. Something inside me came loose. I turned and hit him. It was stupid, messy, and immediate. I hit him because the fake man had Madison's hand, and this idiot had a mouth. He swung back. His fist caught the side of my mask. Pain blasted across my face. I drove into him anyway. We crashed over the table. Trays flew. Men shouted. Someone grabbed my shirt. Someone else kicked my leg. I slammed my elbow into a jaw and felt teeth cut my skin. The big inmate grabbed my mask strap again. That made everything simple. I grabbed his wrist with both hands and twisted until he screamed. The guards came in swinging. A baton hit my shoulder. Another cracked across my back. I went down, still trying to crawl toward the tablet on the floor. The screen lay near a puddle of spilled food. Madison's frozen face smiled up at me from the glass. The fake stood beside her. My life had kept moving. I hadn't. A guard's boot pressed my hand into the floor. He said, "You are getting out of here, mask." I looked at the tablet. The guard said, "No one is looking for you." He was right. That was the worst part. Nobody had filed a missing report. There was no accident story, no search, no Madison crying into Chase's shoulder, and no Chase tearing apart the state trying to find me. Outside, Ryan Walker was home. The fake wasn't hiding in the shadows. He was standing beside my fiancée, planning my wedding, using my name without hesitation. The guards dragged me down the punishment corridor. My feet left red streaks behind me. I should have been scared. I was. But fear had company now. I was still terrified. But now I was angry too. That night, they threw me into a dark cell with no bed, no blanket, and a drain in the center of the floor. I sat against the wall, breathing through the mask, replaying the image again and again. Madison smiling, the fake Ryan beside her, the wedding still moving. I whispered into the dark, "Who the hell are you?" Nobody answered. Above me, somewhere beyond stone and guards and desert, another man was preparing to marry the woman I loved. And I was the only person alive who knew he was fake. I decided to climb out the next morning. That wasn't courage. That was stupid. My body was still half-wrecked from the crash, the intake fight, the cafeteria fight, and the guards taking turns beating me. My hands shook when I tried to hold a cup. My ribs hurt when I breathed. My face burned under the mask if I moved too fast. Naturally, I looked at a cliff hundreds of feet high and decided to make my worst idea of the month official. The old man saw me staring at the wall after breakfast. He said, "Don't do it." I said, "Great advice. Very detailed. You are angry." I noticed. Angry men die on that wall. I looked up at the open sky. Then it can wait its turn. He sighed hard. Maybe I had disappointed him. Maybe the hollow did that to people. It made old men waste advice on idiots who weren't ready to listen. The climb began in the open arena. The guards let me climb. That should have been a sign. In the hollow, an escape attempt was either a security problem or free entertainment. The guards looked entertained. Prisoners gathered along the edges. Some shouted bets, some laughed, some watched quietly because they had seen this before and knew how it usually ended. The big inmate with the crooked nose cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled, "Go get your wife, Mask!" More laughter. I ignored him. Mostly. I hoped dinner gave him a miserable night. I still had standards back then. I reached the base of the wall and put my hands on the rock. It was rough, hot, and sharp. The first hold cut into my palm. I pulled up anyway. One move, then another. The first 20 feet felt almost possible. The prison noise dropped beneath me. My breathing filled the mask. My hands found cracks. My shoes scraped stone. My body remembered strength for a few seconds. For a minute, I was Ryan Walker trying to get back to his life. Then my burned lungs made it clear I wasn't ready. Pain tightened my chest. My grip weakened. Sweat ran under the mask and stung skin that wasn't ready for sweat, air, or existence. Below, prisoners shouted, "Higher! Fall already! 10 meals he drops before the red ledge!" I kept climbing. The wall narrowed. The holds got meaner. Old stains marked places where other men had slipped. I found a strip of cloth caught on a jagged rock and tried very hard not to think about who had left it there. A guard tower horn blared once. I looked down. The big guard stood below with a baton in his hand. He called up, "Wrong route, 914. I gritted my teeth and reached for the next hold. A rock hit the wall near my hand. The rock wasn't meant to kill me. It was meant to ruin my rhythm and remind me they could play. My fingers slipped. I caught myself with one hand, shoulder screaming. The crowd below roared and shouted bets. I pulled myself back to the rock. Another object struck the wall near my foot. Metal this time. A baton maybe. It sparked and dropped. I looked down. The guard smiled. I said something into the mask that wasn't suitable for wedding vows. Then I climbed faster. That was the mistake. Anger made me hurry. Hurrying made me sloppy. Sloppy got me punished. My left hand grabbed a loose edge. It broke. For 1 second I hung there, fingers scraping stone, legs kicking empty air. Then I fell. The first ledge hit my side. The second hit my shoulder. The third scraped the mask across rocks so hard sparks burst in my vision. I dropped the rest of the way and slammed into the arena dirt. Everything went white. When sound returned, the prison was laughing. Some men watched in silence, and that was worse. Laughter was easier to handle. The silent men knew exactly what the fall meant. My hands were bleeding, my ribs felt loose, my shoulder refused to move right, dirt stuck to blood on my arms. The guard stood over me. He said, "You done flying, rich boy?" I tried to push myself up. My arms collapsed. The big inmate laughed from somewhere nearby. Mask forgot gravity. I wanted to answer, something clever, something vicious, something that made me feel less helpless at the bottom of a hole. All I managed was a cough. 2 guards grabbed my arms and dragged me across the arena. Every bump in the ground sent pain through my ribs. They dumped me in the infirmary and left me there with a cracked rib, torn palms, and a headache so bad blinking hurt. The old man came by after lights out. He stood beside my bed and looked at my wrapped hands. I said, "Before you say I told you so, I already hate myself enough." He pulled a stool closer. "Good. Saves time." I tried to laugh. It hurt, so I stopped. The old man said, "The wall doesn't care about your love, your stolen name, or your anger." I stared at the ceiling. He leaned closer. "You don't climb out of the hollow with rage," he said. "You climb out when dying scares you less than staying." I closed my eyes. For the first time since waking underground, I understood something. The wall wasn't the only problem. My body was still too weak from the fire. That man was too weak, so I had to build someone worse. I missed my wedding in a prison infirmary that stank of bleach, rust, and dirty bandages. Bad timing. Most grooms worry about cold feet. I had cracked ribs, torn hands, a mask strapped to my face, and a guard who changed my bandages as roughly as possible. The day started with the young guard from the cafeteria strolling in with a smile. He hadn't. I knew before he turned the tablet on. My body went still before I understood why. The guard said, "Big day, 914. I said nothing. He turned the screen toward me. Madison stood under white flowers in a private estate courtyard. She wore a wedding dress I remembered helping choose. My main contribution had been saying, "You look beautiful," and staying smart enough not to critique lace, but I remembered that dress. The man beside her wore my face. My suit. My place. A minister smiled between them. Madison looked nervous. For one pathetic second, I let myself hope. Maybe she knew. Maybe something felt wrong. Maybe love hadn't failed yet. Then she took his hands. She said her vows. The fake Ryan smiled with my mouth. The guard lowered the tablet after the kiss. Well, he said, congratulations, you are a married man, sort of. I turned my face toward the wall. He wanted me to scream. I didn't give him that. He got his scream later, in the shower room. Prison has a way of smelling weakness before you do. Word spread fast that Madison had married the fake. By dinner, men I didn't know were making jokes about my wife, my face, and whether the new Ryan had better bedroom manners. I let most of it pass. I kept calm because anger had consequences, and I had paid enough already. Then 4 inmates cornered me near the wash area. The big one with the crooked nose was there, of course. Some men hear bad idea and sprint toward it wearing a smile. He said, wedding gift mask, we get to see the bride's real husband. He grabbed for the strap. I stepped back. Another inmate blocked the exit. A third held up a sharpened piece of metal, still sharp enough to ruin my evening. The crooked nose inmate said, come on, show us what she didn't wait for. That hit. He knew exactly where that would hurt. My hand went to the mask. He smiled. This time I didn't swing first. I waited until he reached, then I moved. His hand came for the strap. I caught his wrist, stepped inside, and drove my elbow into his throat. He stumbled back, choking. The man with the metal shard lunged. I turned sideways. The blade cut my arm, hot and quick. I grabbed his wrist, slammed it against the concrete wall, and heard the shard drop. The third inmate tackled me. We hit the wet floor hard. Pain shot through my ribs. He tried to pin my arms. I smashed my forehead into his nose. The mask made a dull crack against bone. Useful accessory, terrible fashion, great for headbutts. The fourth man kicked me in the side. Pain flashed white. I rolled under the next kick, grabbed his ankle, and yanked. He fell backward, his head bouncing off the tile hard enough to make everyone stop for half a second. The guards watched from the doorway. They were late on purpose. I picked up the metal shard. The crooked-nosed inmate was still on his knees, coughing, eyes wide. I walked to him. Every step hurt. My arm bled onto the floor. Water ran red under my shoes. I crouched in front of him and pressed the flat side of the shard under his chin. I wanted him scared, not dead. I wanted him to remember. I said, touch the mask again and you lose the hand. The shower room went quiet. The guards finally moved in. One said, drop it. I did. The metal clicked on tile. Nobody laughed this time. That was my first real win in the hollow. It didn't feel good. That surprised me. I thought violence would make me feel better. I thought putting someone down would take away some of what the wedding had done to me. Instead, I stood there bleeding, shaking, and emptier than before. Madison had married the fake. My life hadn't paused. My old future was gone. There was nothing to save anymore. That should have broken me. Maybe the man who loved wedding jokes, red umbrella texts, and quiet drives died somewhere between the burning car and that shower room. But whatever was left inside the mask didn't want to die. After the guards threw me into a cell, I sat against the wall and stared at my hands. They were swollen, wrapped, and shaking. I opened and closed them until pain blurred the room. The old man visited after lights out. He looked at the blood on my sleeve. You won, he said. I said, didn't feel good. Good. Winning in here is just not dying with style. I almost laughed. He handed me a strip of cloth. Wrap your hands better tomorrow. Tomorrow? You are training now. I looked at him. He pointed toward the arena beyond the cell block. The wall doesn't care about your grief, he said. But your grip might. I touched the black mask. Behind it, my face burned, my chest hurt, my heart hurt worse. I thought of Madison saying vows to my stolen face. I thought of the fake wearing my suit. I thought of the silhouette by the fire. Then I stood up. Tomorrow, I trained. The wedding was already gone. The wedding was already gone. I trained because someone had stolen my life and made one mistake. They left me breathing. The next months didn't turn me into a hero. They turned me into a problem. That was better. Heroes forgive people at inconvenient times. I wasn't in the mood. I was a burned man in an underground prison doing pull-ups on a rusted pipe, while men made bets on whether my hands would split open again. Very inspirational. Somebody put that on a poster. The old man trained me when he wanted and insulted me the rest of the time. He never gave me his name. In the hollow, names were dangerous. People either lost them, sold them, or used them to hurt you. He showed me how to wrap my hands, breathe through the mask without panicking, climb short sections of wall without wasting strength, and fall without breaking every bone I had left. Pain is information, he told me. I said, mine sends too many updates. He shrugged. Then learn which parts to ignore. I ran laps around the arena until my lungs burned. I hung from metal bars until my fingers opened by themselves. I did push-ups on cracked concrete. I carried buckets. I fought for food. I learned which guards liked to bet, which prisoners liked to stab, and which corners of the cafeteria were bad places to stand with your back exposed. Respect in prison came slowly. The old man also taught me how to stop reacting to every insult. That part was harder than the pull-ups. The hollow was full of men who knew how to find a weakness fast. They joked about Madison, they joked about my face, they joked about the fake Ryan sleeping in my bed while I slept on concrete. The first month, every joke made me want to swing. The second month, I learned to smile behind the mask. By the third month, I learned something better. I learned which joke meant a man was testing me, which joke meant a man was scared, and which joke meant trouble after dinner. That was prison education. No refunds, apparently. One afternoon, the crooked-nose inmate tried one last time to make the cafeteria laugh at me. He said, "Mask, when you get out, you gonna ask your wife if she missed you?" The room waited. I looked at him and said, "No, I am going to ask your mother how she survived raising you." The cafeteria went quiet for half a second. Then someone laughed. At him, not me. The crooked-nose inmate stared at me, angry and embarrassed. He didn't attack. He had already learned what happened when he put his hands on the mask. Small victory. Tiny. Petty. Probably unhealthy. I took it anyway. First they laughed at Mask. After that they stopped laughing near me. A few men nodded when I passed. Then the wrong men noticed. The faction that controlled the East Cell Block hated prisoners who attracted attention. Hope made people reckless, and reckless prisoners brought guard attention. The East Block preferred everyone desperate, hungry, and obedient. One night, after training near the drainage tunnel, 3 of them followed me. I heard the steps before I saw them. The tunnel was narrow, damp, and low-ceilinged. One flickering light buzzed above a bend. A fight there would stay hidden. A voice behind me said, "Mask." I stopped. The first man came from the front with a length of chain wrapped around his fist. The second blocked the way back. The third stayed near the light, holding a sharpened piece of metal. I said, "Really? 3 of you?" I am flattered. Annoyed, but flattered. The man with the chain said, "No more climbing." I looked at him. "You worried I'll make the wall look bad?" He swung. The chain slammed into the concrete where my head had been. Sparks jumped. I ducked low, drove my shoulder into his stomach, and shoved him backward into the wall. The second man grabbed me from behind. I slammed my heel into his foot. He cursed. I drove my head back into his face. The mask cracked against his nose. Again, terrible for breathing, excellent for violence. The man with the shard rushed me. I caught his wrist, but the blade cut across my side before I could turn it. Hot pain opened under my ribs. I shoved him into the flickering light fixture. Glass broke. The tunnel went half dark. That saved me. In the dark, I had one advantage. I knew the tunnel better than they did. I knew the tunnel bend. I knew the wet patch near the drain. I knew the low pipe that hung just high enough to miss if you were calm and hit if you were stupid. The chain man swung again. I stepped back. The chain wrapped around the pipe. I yanked it hard, pulling him off balance, then slammed my knee into his face. He dropped to the floor. The second man lunged. I shoved him into the wet patch. His feet slipped. His shoulder hit the wall. I grabbed the back of his shirt and threw him into the third man. Bodies hit concrete. The shards skittered away. The tunnel went quiet except for breathing. My breathing sounded rough inside the mask. I picked up the chain. The 3 men froze. I didn't hit them again. I wanted to. God, I wanted to, but I was learning. Rage kept getting me hurt and I was tired of paying for it. I dropped the chain beside the first man's head. I said, "Tell the East Block I am climbing. If they want to stop me, send better idiots." Then I staggered deeper into the tunnel because my side was bleeding and my legs were barely holding me up. That was where I saw the marks. They were carved low into the wall behind a patch of rusted mesh. 3 shortcuts, then a gap, then 2 cuts angled upward. The marks were deliberate. I leaned closer. More marks continued along the tunnel wall toward a narrow maintenance opening that led behind part of the arena rock. The old man found me there, pressing cloth to my side and staring hard at the wall. He said, "You look terrible." I said, "You always know what to say to a bleeding man." He crouched by the marks. His face changed. "Where did you find these?" he asked. "Behind the mesh." He ran his fingers over the cuts. "A man named Reyes made marks like this years ago." "Did he escape?" He reached the rim. I waited. The old man looked at the maintenance opening. "The desert took him." "Of course it did. The hollow couldn't just have one way to kill you. If the wall failed, the desert finished the job." The old man followed the marks with his hand. "The obvious route is bait," he said. "That is where guards watch. That is where the rock breaks. That is where fools die for the crowd." I looked through the narrow opening. Behind the arena face, hidden by shadow and broken stone, a thin seam ran upward along the wall. Ugly, narrow, almost invisible from below. A real route. My heart started hitting my ribs. The old man turned to me. "You do this wrong. You die quietly where no one can even bet on you." I smiled behind the mask. "Finally," I said, "privacy." For the first time since the crash, the hollow didn't look impossible. It had a weakness, And I had found it. The riot started over bread. That was the hollow in one sentence. Men buried by powerful people, trapped under open sky, fighting over stale bread that could chip a tooth. It should have been sad. It was sad. It was also useful. The East Bloc accused the West Bloc of stealing rations. The West Bloc called them liars. A guard laughed, which was rarely good for diplomacy. Someone threw a tray. Someone else threw a punch. Then the cafeteria erupted into fists, tables, boots, and screaming. I saw the old man across the room. He looked at me once. That was all the permission I was going to get. So, I went. I shoved through the chaos. A prisoner grabbed my sleeve. I twisted free. Another tried to tackle me near the door. I drove him into a table and kept moving. The guards blew whistles. Batons came out. One guard fired into the ceiling. Dust and concrete chips fell. Prisoners scattered and slammed into each other. I reached the service corridor leading toward the hidden tunnel. 2 men from the East Bloc blocked the entrance. The chain man from before had one eye swollen half shut. Apparently he had learned nothing. He said, "No climbing. I was tired. I was scared. My side still ached from the tunnel fight. My hands were wrapped so tightly my fingers felt numb." I said, "Move." He lifted a metal pipe. So I moved him. He swung. I ducked under it and punched him in the ribs. He grunted. The second man grabbed me from the side. I slammed him into the corridor wall, then used the chain man's own pipe to crack him across the forearm. He dropped the pipe. I kicked it away. The second man came again. I caught his shirt, spun him, and shoved him into the chain man. They both fell in a heap. It was ugly, but it worked. At that point, that was enough. I ran into the tunnel. Behind me, the riot spilled into the arena. Alarms began to howl. Red lights flashed along the walls. Guards shouted orders from the towers. I reached the hidden seam behind the broken rock face. The old marks were still there. 3 cuts. Gap. 2 cuts. I put my hands on the wall. For 1 second, I thought of Madison in the wedding dress. Then I pushed the thought away. If I carried that up the wall, I would fall. I climbed. This time I didn't rush. The first section was narrow and sharp. My shoulders scraped rock. My boots found cracks barely wide enough for the edge of a sole. Below me, the riot roared. Above me, the sky looked close, but it was still far away. A guard spotted me halfway to the first hidden ledge. "Climber!" he shouted. A spotlight snapped toward the wall. I pressed flat against the rock. The light slid past, came back, and found the edge of my mask. A shot cracked through the arena. Rock burst near my hand. My fingers slipped. I caught the next hold with 2 fingers and bit down so hard my jaw ached. Another shot hit above me. The prison below erupted. Some men shouted for me to fall. Some shouted for me to climb. Some just screamed because the riot had become bigger than anyone planned. I climbed. Every movement cost something. Skin from my palms, air from my lungs, blood from old cuts, fear I didn't have time to name. A retrieval guard started up the lower wall behind me using a hooked climbing line. Of course, the hollow had a way to chase men up the cliff. The place was cruel, but it was prepared. He climbed fast, too fast. I reached the narrow ledge Reyes had marked and pulled myself onto it. Every part of me wanted to stay there. Then the guard's hook hit the ledge below me. I kept moving. The route turned ugly above the ledge. Less rock. More rusted metal driven into the stone years ago. Some bars held. Some shifted under my weight. The guard below shouted, "You reached the rim. You still die." I looked down. He was close enough to see my mask. I said, "Then you are wasting bullets." He reached for my ankle. I kicked his hand away. He grabbed the strap of my boot. For 1 awful second, he had me. I slammed my heel into his face. He lost his grip. He fell back against his line, swinging hard into the wall. His body hit stone with a sound that made everyone below go quiet for half a breath. I didn't watch him fall. I climbed. The final stretch was worse than the first. The rim was close. That made it harder. My body wanted to believe it was already over. My right hand found the top edge. Stone crumbled. I lunged with my left. My fingers caught dirt and scrub brush. For 1 second, my whole body hung over empty air. Then I pulled. My elbows dragged over the rim. My chest hit the ground. I crawled forward until the cliff edge was behind me. The sky was huge above me. Real air hit the mask. I laughed once. It sounded broken. Then I looked ahead. Desert. Miles of it. There was no road, no lights, no water, and no help. Just empty land under a brutal sky. Getting out of the pit was only the first part. I stood anyway. Behind me, alarms wailed from the pit. Ahead of me, the desert stretched out in every direction. I walked. At first, I counted steps. Then I counted breaths. Then I stopped counting because it did not help anymore. The sun burned. The mask trapped heat. My hands cracked open again. My mouth dried until my tongue felt too big. By night, I was staggering. By dawn, I wasn't sure I was still walking. At some point, my knees folded. I hit sand and didn't get up. The world blurred. Then headlights appeared. They stopped in front of me. A car door opened. A woman's voice said, "Don't move." I tried to laugh. "Good news," I whispered. "I wasn't planning to." Then everything went black. I woke up with a gun pointed at my chest. Honestly, after the hollow, that felt almost polite. At least she warned me before doing anything else. The woman holding it stood beside a dirty clinic bed in a trailer that smelled of antiseptic, engine oil, and old coffee. She had dark hair tied back, tired eyes, and the calm posture of someone who had already decided exactly where to shoot if I did something stupid. She said, "Name." My throat was raw. "Ryan Walker." Her expression didn't change. "Try again." I looked at the gun. "You really hate repetition. I dislike liars more. My name is Ryan Walker." She stepped closer. "Ryan Walker is married, rich, and living behind gates with private security. You were face down in the desert wearing a prison mask and bleeding into my truck." "Long story. I hate long stories." "Then you are going to hate me." Her name was Harper Quinn. She cut one of my restraints loose, then paused before cutting the other. Harper said, "If you try anything stupid, I will shoot you somewhere painful and non-lethal." I said, "That is oddly considerate." She said, "Don't get attached." I liked her even more after that. Trust wasn't her default setting. After the hollow, that felt refreshing. She didn't trust me. Smart woman. She stitched the cut in my side with one hand while keeping the gun within reach of the other. She gave me water in small amounts and cursed when I tried to sit too fast. I told her about the hollow. I gave her the short version because my throat could barely handle words. The pit, the cliff, the guards, the fake prisoner number, the men who disappeared. When I said the name, the hollow, her face changed. Recognition hit her face before she could hide it. She looked away first, which told me more than a speech would have. I said, "You know it." Her jaw tightened. "My brother vanished 5 years ago. The last person who saw him said men in a black transport took him east. Everyone called me crazy when I followed the rumor." "You found it?" "I found the edge of the machine. Then the machine noticed me." That explained the trailer, the gun, and her very limited patience. Before I could ask more, headlights swept across the trailer window. Harper went still. She shut off the lamp. I heard engines outside, more than one. Harper whispered, "How close were they behind you?" I said, "I was unconscious. My tracking skills were limited." She grabbed a bag, tossed me a dark jacket, and said, "Move if you want to stay above ground." The first shot shattered the side window. Glass sprayed across the room. Harper shoved me off the bed. I hit the floor hard, swore into the mask, and crawled after her as more shots punched through the trailer wall. Outside, 2 trucks had stopped near the dirt road. Men in dark gear moved through the dust. Hollow retrieval. I had been free less than a day, and the hollow was already trying to take me back. Harper fired twice from the doorway. The men ducked behind a truck. She grabbed my sleeve and pulled me toward her old pickup. I stumbled. My legs were weak, but fear got me moving. We reached the truck as bullets hit the dirt behind us. Harper shoved me into the passenger seat. I said, "You always rescue men this violently?" She started the engine. "Only the ugly ones." I touched the mask. "Fair." She slammed the truck into reverse and tore away from the trailer. The retrieval trucks followed. The chase cut across dirt roads, then onto a cracked 2-lane highway. Harper drove fast enough to make the truck shake. One truck came up on our left. A man leaned out with a weapon. I grabbed the heavy metal flashlight from the footwell. Harper saw me lift it. "Don't be stupid. I am improvising. That is what stupid people call it." The truck rammed us from the side. Harper fought the wheel. I rolled down the window, waited until the other vehicle came close, and threw the flashlight as hard as my ruined body allowed. It hit the driver's windshield. The glass cracked. The truck swerved. Its front tire clipped the shoulder, and it spun into a ditch. Harper looked at me. I said, "Rich people play baseball too." She almost smiled. The second truck stayed on us until we reached an abandoned gas station near the edge of the highway. Harper cut the wheel behind the building. We bailed out and ran through the empty service bay. One retrieval man followed. He caught me near the old soda machine. I was weak, too weak for a clean fight. He slammed me into the machine, and pain burst through my ribs. He grabbed the mask strap. People kept making the mistake of grabbing that strap. I drove my thumb into his eye. He shouted. Harper came from the side and hit him with the butt of her gun. He dropped. I leaned against the soda machine, breathing hard. Harper said, "You good?" "No," I said, "but I am upright, which feels ambitious." We changed vehicles at dawn with help from one of Harper's contacts, a mechanic who didn't ask questions and looked at me exactly once before deciding questions were bad for his health. Harper gave me a cleaner mask in a motel bathroom 2 hours later. It was black, fitted and sharper than the prison mask. It covered the burns without scraping every raw nerve. I stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't resemble Ryan Walker. I looked rough, dangerous, and half dead. Harper stood in the doorway. "You sure you want to go back today?" I looked at the mask. "No," I said, "but I need to see what he did with my life." By night, we reached the city. Harper parked 2 blocks from my old home. The house looked the same. Lights warm behind tall windows, security at the gate, clean driveway, quiet wealth. A place where danger usually arrived through lawyers, guards, and closed doors. I stood across the street in the dark. Then I saw him. The fake Ryan stepped out onto the balcony. He wore a white shirt, sleeves rolled, holding a drink. My face looked relaxed on him. Comfortable. He moved through my home without any fear. Madison came out behind him. She wore a ring, a wedding ring. She slipped her arms around his waist. He kissed her forehead. I gripped the fence so hard my fingers hurt. I had escaped hell just in time to see my wife married to my replacement. That was a little much, even by rich family standards. Harper said quietly, "Ryan." I couldn't answer. The fake said something to Madison. I couldn't hear it clearly. She frowned, and he gave a smooth little laugh, the kind people use when they are trying to slide past a question. Then he tapped his ring finger twice against the glass in his hand. Tap. Tap. I went still. I couldn't hear what he said, so I couldn't tell if it was a lie, but that movement hit something old inside me. It was too small for a stranger to notice, too familiar for me to ignore. I didn't sleep that night. The burns, the stitches, and my wife sleeping beside a man wearing my face should have been enough to keep me awake. For the record, no therapist charges enough for that sentence, but I couldn't stop thinking about the tap. 2 taps of the ring finger. Tap. Tap. On the balcony, I had only seen the movement. That was the problem. A habit isn't proof, it is only a clue. Harper sat across from me in her safe house kitchen, cleaning a cut on her knuckle from the gas station fight. The windows were covered. A black duffel bag sat by the door in case we had to run. Very homey. Emergency exits and blood wipes really warm up a room. Harper said, "You keep staring at your hand." I looked down. My own fingers were tapping the table. Tap, tap. I stopped. "I know that habit," I said. "The fake Ryan?" "Yeah, but it isn't mine." Harper leaned forward. "Then whose is it?" I closed my eyes. Elementary school came back first. A classroom with green carpet. A cracked fishbowl on the floor. A dead goldfish named Captain Bubbles, because children shouldn't be allowed to name anything. Chase Bennett stood beside me, wide-eyed, telling Mrs. Hanley he had no idea what happened. His ring finger tapped twice against his leg. Tap, tap. Every time Chase lied, he did that. Small lies at first. Homework lies. Snack lies. I didn't break that. Lies. Later, high school lies. "I am fine." Lies. "No, I didn't drink the last beer." Lies. Chase tapped his ring finger twice when he lied. I opened my eyes. The room tilted in my head for a second. Harper saw it. "Ryan?" I said. "No." She waited. I stood too fast, and the chair scraped the floor. "No," I said again. Saying it twice was all I had. Harper said, "Who is it?" I looked at her. "It can't be him." "Who?" My throat tightened behind the mask. "Chase." Saying his name felt wrong. Chase Bennett. My first memory of Chase was him sitting alone on the school playground after another kid shoved him down. I had walked over, offered him half my sandwich, and told him the other kid looked ridiculous. He laughed so hard milk came out of his nose. After that, we were friends. 20 years later, that same boy might be wearing my face. The guy who knew my road. The guy who knew Madison. The guy who knew private things because I trusted him, not because I would ever hand them to a stranger. The guy who knew my childhood, my injuries, my family habits, my favorite lies, and my least favorite truths. Chase had been there through everything. He had been there through everything. That was the point. Harper stayed quiet for a few seconds. Then she said, "A habit is only a clue. I know. You need to hear him lie. I know. And you can't walk into your own house wearing a black mask and pretend you are a normal guest." I looked at her. She shrugged. "I am just respecting the obvious." She was right. Nobody would invite me anywhere now. To that world, I was a masked stranger with a prison record and a face nobody wanted to look at. So, Harper got me in the only way that made sense, through the staff door. 2 nights later, the fake Ryan attended a private Walker Trust prep dinner at a closed restaurant downtown. Only trustees, old family friends, Madison, security, and staff were there. The dinner was supposed to prepare for the 1-year anniversary event. Chase, living as me, needed those people comfortable before he asked for deeper control of the Walker Trust. Harper found a catering uniform, a temporary staff badge, and a service schedule from someone who owed her a favor and apparently valued breathing. I wore a black staff jacket, gloves, and a cap pulled low over my mask. It was obvious if anyone cared to look. Rich people rarely cared to look at staff. It is almost impressive, in the worst way. I stood near the service corridor with a tray of tiny crab cakes I had no intention of serving. My job was simple. Listen, watch, don't punch anyone unless the evening absolutely required it. The fake Ryan sat at the center table beside Madison. He wore a navy suit and had my face. Madison kept her hand near his wrist, ready to stop him from making mistakes. A trustee named Alden leaned back with a glass of wine and said, "Ryan, before the anniversary, are we still listing the lake house as an asset you want to keep?" My body went still. Alden smiled. "I only asked because you hated that place as a kid. Those old portraits in the west hallway used to scare the hell out of you." That was true. I hated the Walker Lake house. My grandfather kept portraits of dead relatives in every hallway. When I was 9, Chase and I dared each other to sleep there. I lasted 20 minutes. Chase lasted 12. We both lied and said we made it all night. The fake Ryan smiled with my mouth. "No," he said. "I love the lake house. Always have." Tap, tap. His ring finger hit the stem of his glass twice. There it was, a clear lie, a personal lie, a lie I could recognize and Chase's habit attached to it. Madison moved before anyone else could notice the mistake. Her fingers touched his wrist under the table. "Gentle. Warning," she said smoothly. "Ryan means he loves the property. He still hates sleeping there. Too many old portraits." Everyone laughed. Chase laughed half a second late. I stayed quiet. That correction should have been small. Instead, it told me Madison had done this before. She looked practiced. But I couldn't deal with Madison yet. If I focused on her too long, I would lose control. The fake Ryan repeated the tap later when Alden asked if he had already reviewed a family vote with Madison. "Of course," he said. "Madison and I already discussed it." Tap, tap. Madison's eyes flicked toward his hand. Mine did too. The memory landed all the way this time. Chase. It was Chase. My best friend hadn't vanished from my life. He had taken my place and locked me out. I took one step back into the service corridor before my legs decided to do something stupid. Harper's voice whispered in my earpiece. "Don't go near him." I said nothing. "Ryan," Harper said. "Don't. Too late." The fake Ryan left the dining room with 2 security guards after dinner, heading toward the private garage under the restaurant. I followed from the staff corridor, keeping to the shadow between delivery carts and wine crates. He paused near the elevator. I stayed behind a concrete pillar. Then I said, low enough that only he could hear, "Mrs. Hanley's goldfish still deserves justice." The fake Ryan stopped breathing. For 1 second, the face was mine, but the fear was Chase's. He turned slowly toward the shadow. His eyes found the mask. I watched recognition fail, then fight its way through him. He failed to recognize my face. Of course he did. That part was gone. But he knew the line. Only 2 boys had known the truth about that fishbowl. One of them was standing in the shadows with a mask on. The other was standing in front of me with my face. His security guard noticed me and reached for his weapon. "Hey!" the guard shouted. That broke the spell. Harper cursed in my earpiece. "Move!" The garage erupted. I ran between parked cars. A guard lunged. I slammed my shoulder into him, bounced him off the hood of a black sedan, and kept moving. Another guard grabbed my jacket. I twisted, drove my elbow into his jaw, and felt the cut in my side pull open. Pain flared. I kept running. Behind me, Chase shouted, "Stop him!" That was Chase. I heard it now. The old rhythm under the voice. The panic he used to get when a lie got too big. A guard tackled me near the ramp. We hit concrete. My mask scraped the floor. He reached for the backstrap. I hooked my arm around his neck, rolled, and slammed him into the side of a car. The alarms screamed. Harper drove into the garage in a stolen delivery van. Subtle had officially died. The side door slid open. She yelled, "Get in!" I dove inside. A bullet cracked the rear window as she sped up the ramp. I looked back through broken glass. Chase stood in the garage lights, wearing my face, breathing hard. He looked scared. Good. Harper drove into the night. I sat on the floor of the van, blood soaking through my shirt, hands shaking, mask cracked along one edge. The truth settled in. Chase didn't know me because he loved me. He knew me because he was rehearsing. Every sleepover, every secret, every late-night call, every time he had stood beside me and smiled. He had been studying me. He had spent 20 years learning how to become me. I leaned my head against the van wall and laughed once. It came out wrong. Harper glanced back. "Ryan," I said, "my best friend stole my face." The words sounded impossible. Then I saw Chase's fear again. It was personal. Chase used to hate losing. When we were kids, he could lose a game and laugh, but his finger would start tapping. Tap, tap. He would say it didn't matter, then spend the next week learning every rule until he could beat me. Back then, I thought it was determination. Now I understood he had always wanted more than I saw. He didn't want to win beside me. He wanted to become me. That realization made me dangerous in a sloppy way. Harper noticed because she watched people closely. She said, "Don't run at him just because he hurt you." I said, "That is weirdly poetic for someone who keeps guns in cereal boxes. I keep one gun in a cereal box. One is enough to affect the mood." She stared at the road. "I am serious. Chase has your life. You have pain and a mask. Pain feels powerful until it gets you caught." I hated that she was right. I hated even more that she said Chase's name as a target and nothing else. To me, it was still both. After I learned it was Chase, I wanted one thing from Madison: innocence. That is embarrassing to admit. After the prison, the fake wedding, the balcony, the ring, the lies, some stupid part of me still wanted Madison to be fooled. I wanted one part of my old life to still be real. Harper called that denial. I called it being emotionally stupid with history. Both were accurate. For the next few days, we watched Madison. We watched from a distance, and yes, the mask didn't help my case. Madison with the last question that could still break me. Chase could fake my face. He could fake my walk, my clothes, my smile, and enough memories to get through a dinner with people who mostly listened to themselves anyway. Madison was different. She had known me since middle school. She had loved me since high school. She knew how I ordered coffee when I was tired, how I got quiet before family meetings, and how much I hated being reduced to a family asset. She should have noticed. At first, I told myself she had. Maybe she was trapped. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe Chase had threatened her. Maybe she suspected but didn't know how to survive the truth. Then I saw her cover for him again. It happened at another anniversary prep dinner, this one inside a private room at the Walker estate. Harper got us near the service corridor because apparently she had contacts everywhere except therapy, which I needed more. I watched through a narrow gap near the kitchen door. An old family friend lifted his glass and said, "Ryan, still drinking bourbon?" Chase smiled with my face. "Always. Wrong. I hated bourbon. It tasted terrible to me." Madison leaned in before anyone else could react. Her voice was soft, almost affectionate. She said, "He means rye. He has been saying bourbon all week because the caterer keeps pushing that label." People laughed. Chase changed the order. Madison's smile stayed perfect. My stomach didn't. A few minutes later, someone mentioned my mother's birthday. Chase gave the wrong month. Madison laughed before anyone could notice the mistake. She said, "He always mixes up the dinner date with the birthday. It drives me crazy." I never mixed those up. She was managing him. She was managing him. She wasn't helping a confused husband through trauma. Harper looked at me in the hallway. "You knew this was possible," I said. "Knowing and watching are different." The worst part was how smooth Madison was. She looked practiced. She knew how to cover a mistake before anyone else noticed. I still needed to test her directly. That was the dumb romantic part of me asking for one last answer. Physically, I had already collected enough punches for one lifetime. The next night, Madison attended a final anniversary prep meeting at the Walker estate. 1 year since the wedding. It was supposed to be romantic, but the guest list had trustees, lawyers, asset managers, and people turning marriage into business. Romance, apparently, now required signatures. Harper found a service entrance route. I went in wearing a dark staff jacket, a cap, gloves, and the mask under a hood. Nobody invited me. Nobody allowed me there. I wasn't Ryan Walker to that house anymore. I was a trespasser using a catering hallway. In rich houses, staff can move through hallways without being noticed. I moved through the service corridor carrying a tray I had stolen from the kitchen. A security guard noticed me near Madison's dressing suite. "You," the guard said. "Wrong hallway." I lowered the tray. He stepped closer. I hit him with the tray. The tray was a ridiculous weapon, but it worked. He staggered. I grabbed his jacket, pulled him into the wall, and drove my knee into his stomach. He swung at me. I ducked, shoved him into a linen cart, and sent the entire cart rolling down the corridor. White towels exploded everywhere. If the wedding planner from my old life had seen it, she would have needed a chair. Another guard came around the corner. I ran. He chased. I reached Madison's suite door just ahead of him, slipped inside, and locked it behind me. Madison stood in front of a mirror wearing a pale gold dress. She turned, annoyed first. Then she saw the mask. Her face went white. For a second, neither of us moved. The guard pounded on the door behind me. Madison whispered, "Who are you?" I wanted to say my name. I wanted to tear the room apart. I wanted her to run to me, touch the mask, and somehow know. Instead, I said 2 words. "Red umbrella." Madison's lips parted. Her hand went to the dresser behind her. She needed the support. There it was. Recognition. Fear came before confusion or concern. She knew that phrase. She knew me. The guard hit the door again. Madison looked from me to the door, then back to me. For one tiny, useless second, I thought she might whisper my name. She didn't. She reached for her phone. I said, "Madison." She flinched. That hurt more than the guard, she whispered. You need to leave. She skipped my name. She skipped the part where I was alive. She said, you need to leave. The door cracked behind me. I crossed the room, opened the window, and climbed out onto a narrow balcony ledge, because I was getting too good at escaping through bad exits. As I dropped to the service terrace below, I heard Madison unlock the door. The guard burst in. Madison's voice shook, but only a little. She said, call Chase, now! I landed hard, pain shooting through my legs. Harper pulled up near the service gate in a black SUV. I got in. She looked at me once and didn't ask if Madison was innocent. She already knew the answer from my silence. As we drove away, my phone buzzed. Harper had cloned a security alert channel earlier. On the screen, a message flashed from Madison to Chase. The masked man knows too much. I stopped hoping. Madison hadn't run to me. She had warned the man wearing me. The anniversary invitation was ivory, embossed and expensive enough to be annoying on principle. Harper found one through a staff channel and slid it across the safe house table. It had been 1 year since the wedding, 1 year since Madison said vows to Chase while I was underground. The event was at the Walker estate. Private guests only, family trustees, lawyers, a few old friends, senior staff, security everywhere. It was presented as a romantic anniversary celebration. The real purpose was control. Chase, as Ryan Walker, was expected to sign deeper control documents that night. Trust authority, family asset access, more power over the Walker family business. The man had stolen my face, married my fiancée, moved into my home, and now he wanted control over everything else. Ambitious, disgusting, and very organized. Harper leaned over the table. This is a trap, I said. I know, she warned him. I know. He knows the masked man is connected to you. I know. You keep saying that, and it is still stupid. I looked at the invitation. If he signs those papers as me, it gets worse. It is already worse. Then I am consistent. Harper didn't laugh. She wasn't wrong. I was walking into a controlled room where Chase had my face, Madison had my name, security had my false prisoner record, and half the people attending preferred the comfortable lie to the burned man telling the truth. But waiting had a cost too. Every day Chase lived as me. Removing him became harder. Every day Madison stood beside him. More people accepted him as Ryan. Every day I stayed hidden. I remained exactly what they wanted, a masked man with no proof and no voice. So we planned. We kept it simple. Perfect plans usually failed the second somebody with a gun kicked in a door. Harper would cut certain cameras, jam one service gate, and stay near the old security office. I would enter through a supply route used by caterers. We had the crash location photos, a few fragments Harper recovered from the hollow retrieval truck, and enough pieces to make Chase sweat. We had enough to make him slip. That was the real goal. Chase's confidence was the target now. I needed him to make one mistake. The night of the anniversary, the Walker estate looked beautiful. Of course it did. Wealth is good at making a place look clean before guests arrive. Lights hung from trees. Valets moved cars. Staff carried trays through side doors. Guests smiled in the warm windows, glasses in hand, pretending this was love instead of a business meeting with champagne. I entered through the service gate wearing a black suit, black gloves, and the mask under a catering cap and hood. Subtle was no longer an option. I made it through the first corridor before the trap closed. A security guard stepped out from a side door, then another behind me. Then the lights in the corridor brightened. I looked up at the camera in the corner. Chase had expected the service route. Madison had told him enough. The first guard said, "Hands where I can see them." I lifted my hands slowly. The guard stepped closer with zip ties. I waited until he reached for my wrist. Then I broke his nose with my forehead. The mask hit bone. He dropped. The second guard rushed me. I grabbed his arm, turned, and slammed him into the wall. His shoulder hit a framed landscape painting that probably cost more than the ambulance he needed. The painting fell. Expensive damage. I had bigger concerns. More footsteps came from the hall. I ran. A guard tackled me near the wine storage room. We crashed through the door. Bottles shattered. Red wine spread across the floor. He swung. I blocked with my forearm and punched him in the throat. He staggered into a rack. More bottles broke. I slipped, caught myself on the shelf, and grabbed one bottle by the neck. A fourth guard entered. I pointed the bottle at him. He paused. I said, "Do not make me waste a good vintage." He lunged. I hit him with it. The bottle shattered across his shoulder. He went down cursing. Harper's voice crackled through the earpiece. "You were supposed to avoid a fight." I stepped over the guard. They had notes. "Exit route is hot. I see 2 black vehicles near the East Drive." Hollow? I think so. Of course. Chase wasn't planning to hand me to local security. He was planning to send me back underground. That should have made me leave. It did the opposite. I moved through the service hall toward the main event room. Behind the doors, I could hear music, glasses, and low laughter from people who believed violence happened somewhere else. Harper said, "Ryan, if you go in now, you may not get out." I looked down at my gloved hands. One was shaking. It was shaking from rage as much as fear. Chase was in there with my face. Madison was in there with my last name. The trustees were in there ready to hand him deeper control over a life he stole while I bled in a pit. Waiting felt impossible. I opened the doors. The staff stopped moving first. Then the guests turned. Then Madison saw me. Her glass froze halfway to her mouth. Chase stood near the signing table in a dark suit, wearing my face with confidence. He didn't look surprised. He smiled. That smile told me everything. He had been waiting. Chase spoke before I did. Smart. Liars love speaking first. It gives them a few seconds to shape the room. He stepped away from the signing table, raised both hands to calm the guests, and said, "Everyone, stay back. This is the masked man I warned security about." Guests shifted. A trustee took one step behind a chair. Madison lowered her glass with careful fingers. Chase looked at me with my own eyes and said, "He is an escaped prisoner. He has been stalking my wife." My wife. He said it cleanly. He said it cleanly, with confidence he hadn't earned. A guard moved toward me. I didn't step back. I said, "Tell them about the road." Chase's smile held. "What road?" he asked. "The one outside the city. Empty fields, no cameras, no witnesses." A few guests looked at each other. Madison's fingers tightened around her glass. Chase gave a soft laugh. "This is exactly what I meant. He has built a fantasy around my life." I took one step forward. Two guards moved with me. I said, "The brakes died, the steering locked, the car burned. Somebody stood outside the fire and told me it was my turn to suffer." The room went quieter. They were listening. "That was enough for now." Chase said, "You need help." I looked at Madison. "That line popular between you two?" Her face flinched. "Small, fast." Chase saw it too. His smile tightened. He said, "Don't speak to her." There it was. Chase's panic was using my mouth. I moved toward the signing table. Security closed in. One guard grabbed my arm. I twisted, slammed my elbow into his chest, and shoved him into the table. Pens scattered. A folder slid across the polished wood. Another guard reached for my mask. I caught his wrist and drove my knee into his ribs. He dropped with a grunt. The room erupted. Guests backed away. Chairs scraped. Someone dropped a glass. Staff froze with trays in their hands. Chase shouted, "Take him down!" I grabbed the signing folder and threw it open on the table. The papers wouldn't save me. They would show everyone what he was about to sign. I said, he wasn't celebrating an anniversary. He was signing deeper control over the Walker Trust. One trustee said, "Ryan, let security handle this." I turned toward him. The trustee looked at my mask and hesitated. He had called Chase Ryan. Of course he had. The man lying to the room still had my face. Chase pointed at me. "He is violent. You can all see it." I laughed once. "You sent me to a prison under the desert and now you are mad I learned cardio?" A few faces changed. The line was insane. So was the night. I looked at Chase. Mrs. Hanley's goldfish. His face went pale under the expensive lighting. The room missed the meaning. Chase understood too much. I said, "5th grade, green carpet, cracked bowl. You tapped your ring finger twice and lied to her face." His right hand closed into a fist. Too late. Several people saw it. I pointed at his hand. "There. That." Chase looked down, then quickly hid his hand behind his back. A woman near the fireplace whispered, "Why did he react that way?" "Fair question." Chase's voice sharpened. "He researched me. He is obsessed." "You mean he researched Ryan?" I said. "That is the problem, Chase." The name landed. "Chase." Someone gasped. Madison closed her eyes for half a second. Chase stepped toward me. His performance finally slipped, and the face he wore was mine. He said, low and furious, "You should have stayed buried." The nearest trustee heard it. His expression changed. I turned slightly so the room could see Chase. "What did you say?" I asked. Chase realized the mistake. His mouth opened. He had no answer. Beautiful. For 1 second, I saw the boy I used to know, caught in another lie. Then he snapped. "You had everything," Chase said. His voice rose. The room froze around him. "You had the money, the name, the girl, the house, the family business. Every room made space for you. I stood beside you for 20 years and watched everyone choose you first." Madison whispered. "Chase." Too late. He turned on her. "No! I am done pretending he deserved it just because he was born with the right last name." There it was. Jealousy. It was jealousy, backed by surgery and a prison. The room began to move. Phones came out. A trustee backed away from Chase. One guard looked between us, suddenly less sure who he was protecting. Then the side doors opened. 3 men entered in dark coats. They were hollow retrieval. I recognized the threat immediately. Harper's voice hit my earpiece. "Ryan, east door, now." Those are hollow men, one retrieval man said. The escaped asset comes with us. That word did something to the room. Asset. The word asset changed the room. Chase's face tightened. Madison stepped forward quickly. This is out of control, everyone needs to calm down. She was good, I had to give her that. Madison didn't panic loudly. She tried to make panic sound reasonable. She looked at the room with wet eyes and said, I was scared, he kept appearing. I didn't know what he wanted. Chase was trying to protect me. Chase. She used his real name. The room heard it. Her mouth froze. One mistake. One tiny mistake. I looked at her. You just called him Chase. Madison's face emptied. Chase turned toward her slowly. The trustees started whispering now, and the mood shifted hard. A hollow man moved toward me. I grabbed the chair beside me and slammed it into his knees. He went down. Another rushed me. I ducked under his arm, drove him into the signing table, and heard the wood crack. Security joined the mess. Some tried to grab me. Others blocked the hollow men. Nobody knew whose orders mattered anymore. For a few minutes, no one in that room knew who to believe. That was enough. I fought through the chaos toward the side office where Harper had told me to go. A guard caught my jacket. I twisted free and left the jacket in his hand. A hollow man grabbed my shoulder. I slammed the back of my head into his mouth, mask first, and he stumbled away bleeding from the lip. I reached the office and shoved the door shut behind me. My phone buzzed. A file from Harper. Hollow intake record. The side office smelled of old paper and expensive wood polish. A framed photo of my grandfather sat on the shelf behind the desk. He had the same cold walker stare he used when I was a kid. For 1 second, I almost felt bad for bleeding on the carpet. That was how my family world worked. You could crawl out of a secret prison, fight 3 armed men, and still worry about the carpet. Then the phone buzzed again. Harper had sent a second attachment, a cropped image from the same intake chain. My burned intake photo, the rough prison mask, the fake number under it. Condition, alive. I stared at that word. Alive. Someone had written it down. Someone had known I was breathing when they buried me. Someone had listed me as damaged property and moved on with their evening. My hands shook as I opened it. There were only a few clear lines. Most of it was blacked out. Fake prisoner number, transfer code, condition on arrival, facial trauma, non-public status. Then I saw the authorization trail. I expected Chase. I expected an unknown sponsor. I expected anything except the name that appeared in clean black text, Madison Cole Walker. For a second, I barely heard the noise outside. I stared at her name. Madison Cole Walker. The married name made it worse, the name she wore while I was underground. Her authorization sat right there on the file that had buried me. Above her line was another field. Highest sponsor. Redacted. Of course it was. The timing was cruel enough to feel personal. The office door slammed open. Chase stood there, breathing hard, tie crooked, fear showing on my face. Madison stood behind him. Her eyes went to my phone. She knew. She knew what I had seen. I stepped back into the event room with the phone in my hand. The fighting slowed. The guests stared. The trustees stared. Chase stared. Madison didn't move. I lifted the phone so she could see the screen. Tell me this is fake, I said. My voice sounded calm. That scared me more than yelling would have. Madison's lips trembled. She whispered, Ryan. The room heard my name in her voice. She meant me. Chase stared at her, shocked. I said, tell me you didn't help put me in that hole. Madison's eyes filled. She gave me no answer. That was the answer. The room reacted again. A few people stepped away from her. One trustee lowered his phone slowly. A staff member near the bar covered her mouth. Chase reached for Madison's arm, but she pulled back. Their stolen marriage didn't look romantic anymore. It was evidence. I looked at Chase wearing my face. I looked at Madison wearing my last name. I looked at the trustees who still hadn't chosen me. Truth was harder for them to accept when it came from a burned, masked man covered in blood. The lie was exposed, but it still had power. A hollow man spoke from near the door. He is still marked as escaped property. Harper's voice snapped in my ear. Ryan, move now. I backed toward the broken side exit, phone clenched in my hand. Madison took 1 step forward. Ryan, please. A year ago, hearing her say my name like that would have broken me. I said, don't use my name after you signed it away. She stopped. Chase's perfect face shook with rage. I touched the edge of the black mask. This had started with me burning while someone watched. Now I stood behind the mask and watched the 2 people I loved realize I had survived. I hadn't won. But now I knew where to aim. Chase still had my face. Madison still had my name. The hollow still had a redacted sponsor hiding above them both. I was still hunted as an escaped asset. But for the first time, they knew I had survived. I stepped through the broken exit into the dark. The hallway outside the event room was full of smoke from a cracked emergency light and the smell of spilled liquor. Harper was waiting near the service stairs with blood on her cheek and a pistol in her hand. She looked at the file on my phone, then at my face. Harper said, "Tell me that isn't what I think it is." I said, "It is worse!" Behind us, Chase shouted for security again, but people didn't move as fast this time. The real damage was doubt. People had seen him crack. A young server stood frozen near the side door, staring at me. His tray was on the floor, champagne spread under his shoes. For a second, he seemed unsure what to call me. He only whispered, "Mr. Walker?" I almost stopped. Stopping would have been dangerous. Recognition almost stopped me. Then the hollow men turned the corner, and I kept moving. Behind me, Madison cried my name again. I didn't turn around. The phone screen stayed bright in my hand. Madison Cole Walker. Highest sponsor redacted. The story wasn't over. Now I had a list of people to destroy.